What if I told you that the technology designed for communication is actually dividing us? The camera slowly sweeps over the metropolis where skyscrapers pierce the clouds and neon lights brightly sparkle, creating the illusion of life and happiness. The windows of high-rises reflect an endless race, where algorithms determine the fate of millions. Lonely figures rush through the streets engrossed in their devices, each one not just a person but a rating they carry on their shoulders. Here in this city, every step and every word is recorded, processed, integrated into a larger picture. Software evaluates every smile and every silence. People exchange glances, but their eyes do not meet. They are busy scrolling through their devices, designed for connection yet increasingly isolating them from real conversations. The walls of buildings are filled with screens displaying faces perfect and carefree. Every message is a transaction, every like a reward system. Behind all these virtual interactions lies an inaccessible truth, a desperation to escape this game, where real feelings fade against the brightness and popularity. The more technology there is, the less humanity remains. This is not just a living space. It is a labyrinth where people get lost, fighting for attention and approval. And so, amid this symphony of light and shadow, a hero emerges. A person who begins to realize that behind their actions lies a cold algorithm. They question what it means to be human in a world where values are shaped by trends and happiness is defined by numbers. They step outside this reality, gradually distancing themselves from the mercantilism of communication and diving into a virtual environment where their real life and fantasies intersect. There they discover a multitude of voices, each oscillating between the concepts of love and loneliness. But will this search become a source of strength or lead to even greater isolation? In this world rich in emotions and inspiration lies the question, is it possible to find one's true individuality in such digital chaos? This is where their story begins, a journey toward liberation, a thirst to understand oneself amidst the various masks created to hide the reality of their isolation. What if I told you that everything you believed is a lie? What conclusion can we draw when looking at the multitude of notifications and ratings that fill our screens? It seems that life decisions are made by algorithms. I wake up every day and dive into a world of codes, but at some point I begin to feel that it's not me controlling them, but they are controlling me. Every like, every line of code, every moment spent in front of the monitor compresses me into capsules where I lose my individuality. Look at my desk, all these emails, work tasks interrupting my train of thought. They seem to whisper to me, "You must be perfect. You must conform." But where am I in all this? We all create illusions, playing roles that we must fulfill to grow in our careers rather than in our lives. When was the last time I felt I was living for myself? Every time I pass by colleagues clicking buttons and awaiting evaluations, I realize that I have no time left just to be. Are we all willing to be defined by bots and their algorithms? How many real connections have we already lost, completely mired in this digital loop? Think for a moment. How many days, minutes, and seconds have we sacrificed conforming to this system? What if each of us could disconnect from all this information for at least a few hours? What if we pondered what it means to be ourselves, rather than a worker subservient to virtual puppets? Every new day is a chance for change, but it won't happen as long as we accept the rules of a game created not for us. Every notification seems important, but in reality it's just noise that distracts from the present. What if peace and true joy lie beyond this virtual prison? Have you ever wondered what it's like to step out of the shadow of algorithms and ask yourself who you really are? What if I told you that each of your actions could cost you your status in society? Imagine a world where every step you take is tracked, every word weighed, and social ratings fluctuate based on your actions. You step outside and immediately see the numbers around you change. On large screens like in the center of your city, people's ratings are updated. Do you notice how neighbors look at each other with distrust? How they assess every movement, every smile, every unguarded word? Someone gives up their seat on public transport, their rating goes up, and someone littered on the ground, their rating plummets. It doesn't matter who you truly are, a good person or an evil one. Everything is determined by the eyes of society, watching you and breathing down your neck. This is not just statistics, it's real social pressure that shapes behavior. People have started wearing masks not only in the summer but also in life. Can you imagine how this affects personal relationships? How friendship can break under the weight of numbers on a screen? Today you are on the rise and tomorrow you are of no value to anyone. This all becomes reality. Aren't you curious how far one can go to raise their rating? Imagine the strategies people use to maintain their positions. In this world, every choice becomes critical, and it is so easy to lose yourself among the numbers. What do others really think of you when they look at you through the lens of social ratings? What if I told you that technology is destroying romance in our lives? In a cozy cafe, where a couple sits at a table, their conversation is interrupted every few minutes. They are engrossed in their phone screens, almost forgetting about what is happening around them. Every notification sound makes their eyes meet, but instead they rush to check how many likes their latest posts have received. She smiles when she sees someone has sent her something funny, but at that moment his face turns serious. He notices that his friendly exchanges have become less engaging. In a way, they learn to evaluate their connection by digital metrics while true intimacy takes a back seat. He looks up and catches her gaze, full of uncertainty. This is not the moment to play the game of who answers faster, but their hands reach for their devices, not wanting to miss a single moment. How can you feel close to me when we are really at our own screens? He weakly smiles. She sighs, thinking about how often this happens. Whole evenings when they feel together, but in reality they are more distant than ever. Every like and every comment seems more important than conversations about topics that truly matter. This is not just a complaint about disconnection, it's a protest against the deception they have created between themselves when technology replaced sincerity. Every click, every swipe is a step towards understanding that they have become prisoners of their own devices. At that moment, they realize that true closeness is not measured by the number of likes, but embraced in tenderness and understanding. "Let's just talk," he says, resolutely putting his phone aside. She responds readily, and their eyes meet again against the peaceful whisper of the cafe, where real communication returns to their lives. In a world where algorithms rule emotions, they chose to break free. But will they be able to remain true to this decision when distractions are everywhere? Such questions linger in the air as the couple begins their conversation anew, gaining freedom from the digital yoke. Do you know what your real life looks like? A programmer sitting at a desk, immersed in bright numbers and graphs on the screen, feels the world around him blur. He glances at his achievements. Blue streaks of success, increasing popularity, new followers. But something inside him remains empty, like a bowl that never fills. Each like sounds like an echo in an empty hall, and accomplishments that once brought joy are now just echoes of the past. He stares at the screen. It's time to check the next project, but a question lingers in his mind. Where is the passion that once drove him forward? Instead, there's only the mechanical execution of routine tasks, code that leads to new numbers but takes pieces of his soul. He feels like a runner sprinting in place, never leaving this closed loop. What if he stopped chasing numbers? How would his life change if he left all these races behind? Emotions mix: fear, sadness, dissatisfaction. He wants to find meaning hidden deep inside and realizes his life shouldn't be just numbers on a screen. Doubts begin to turn into desire. He wants to think about what truly matters, to find that thread that will connect him to his true self. What will happen if you stop limiting yourself? He looked at the screen where bright program and social media windows flickered like traps, closing him in four walls. Everything around felt familiar, but life seemed frozen. The inner voice whispered, "Enough." He abruptly stood up, turned off the computer, and felt the buzzing in his ears fade away. Stepping into the hallway, he had never felt so alive. Outside, he was met by a stream of people rushing about their business. Each of them was part of this vast, bubbling river of life. But what was he doing here? Just watching while sitting at home, caught between deadlines and obligations. He sat on a bench in the park, observing passers-by, and suddenly noticed a woman laughing with her children. It was so simple yet beautiful at the same time. He remembered how he too had laughed and played once, instead of sitting absorbed in a screen. Looking at the world around, he felt his shoulders gradually begin to relax. Every person passing by carried their own story, and even if they rushed like atoms in their own rhythm, each one carried with them a unique trace. A fragment of a dream, a spark of hope, a drop of happiness. And he wanted to feel that too. It was time to break out of the boundaries of his usual self. Now was the time to act. As he contemplated the long streets, he decided he just needed to rise and walk. Ahead was the waterfront and a bright sunny sky with clouds like shards of a snow-white petal. Each step was truly the first step towards a new beginning, a full life. He knew it was just a small step, but it could change everything. And here he was, finally stepping out of his comfort zone, determined to explore the world and himself. Are you ready to discover the truth about what virtual reality really conceals? At first glance, it may seem like just a game, but in reality, it is a whole world where one can talk about the deepest experiences and dreams. Imagine stepping into a space filled with light and warmth, where people openly share their inner selves without fear of judgment. There are no assessments or stereotypes here, only sincere words and radiant eyes full of hope. Here, everyone can be themselves. You watch as a woman recounts her losses, her voice trembling with emotion, yet the air is filled with support. Another person shares their dream of becoming an artist, and sparks of inspiration ignite on the faces of those present. This is not just a discussion. It is a catharsis where every conversation becomes a step towards healing, towards connection, towards understanding. The virtual room transforms your perception of interaction. Here you can speak about pain, fears, and hopes without fear of being misunderstood. With each story, you feel the walls of invisible barriers crumble. It's as if a warm flow of support and understanding embraces you, something you couldn't feel in real life, where judgment is the norm and vulnerability is seen as weakness. What if it is here, in this virtual space, that you find not only understanding but also the opportunity to grow? Confusion and loneliness are replaced by new connections. You begin to question, what if everything you learned in the real world is actually limiting you? Being vulnerable here means being strong. Being open means being alive. At this stage, your dreams begin to take shape and suffering becomes known. You are no longer alone but part of the whole. This is precisely the contrast that makes you reflect on how much has been missed in the real world, where openness is often perceived as vulnerability. Virtual reality offers you a bridge to possibilities you may have never dared to imagine. What would you do if you learned that your entire life is just a reflection of your fears and hopes? We live in a world where openness is a luxury and vulnerability is a weakness. But who said there's anything wrong with that? In our next conversation, I met many people who shared their stories, and each one turned out to be deeper and richer than the last. I always thought love was just a picture from romantic movies, a girl with sincere eyes says. But in reality, love is work. It's daily choices and compromises. I've learned to appreciate not perfection, but reality, our ordinary life. Her story becomes an addition to my own. I remember how often I found myself alone with my fears, afraid of being misunderstood. This fear, like a shadow, followed me. "It's not scary," a guy replies to me with a smile. "What's scary is living as if love doesn't exist." And here I am with them, in the flow of revelations when the world seems brighter and anxiety takes a back seat. "My first marriage was a mistake," a woman at the table shares. "I was too young and didn't understand what influenced my life." You need to be able to speak, to share your fears. That's the key that opens the doors to true happiness. With each new story, I realize openness changes us. It turns pain into experience and fear into confidence. "I lost my job and thought it was the end," a man with a tattoo on his arm says. "But it became the beginning of a new path, my path." I'm no longer afraid to talk about myself. That's where the power lies. And while we sit, laugh, and sometimes cry, I realize each of us is ashamed of our vulnerability, but it is what makes us alive. This conversation is not about how to be perfect, but about how to be real. I feel like each of us is challenging society, leaving no room for fears. When I look into the eyes of these people, I see more than just stories. I see hope. Hope that honest conversations can change not only our lives, but also the society around us. That there's no need to hide behind masks. Being yourself is okay. Perhaps next time you see someone who looks too happy or too calm, remember, behind that smile may lie an entire world yearning for understanding and acceptance. And that is what gives life meaning. What if everything you were taught about love and happiness is outdated? He sits in a cozy chair with books full of wisdom on the table in front of him, and around him are avatars of great philosophers from different eras like ghosts, persistently suggesting important thoughts. If he just reaches out, he can touch ideas that have changed the destinies of millions. He opens the first book and immerses himself in the world of Socrates. "Know thyself," whispers a voice in his head, and he begins to ponder how easily we forget our inner self in the hustle and bustle of everyday life. And what if this self is the key to understanding happiness? The next book is about Aristotle. Words about virtues and harmony fill his mind. He reflects. How many false notions about what it means to be happy surround him? How often does he confuse short-term pleasures with true happiness? This realization makes his heart pause, sending shivers down his spine. The avatar of Kant appears with his thoughtful gaze and confident tone. Act only according to that maxim whereby you can, at the same time, will that it should become a universal law. He understands how difficult it is to follow moral principles in a world full of temptations. But this is what makes a person truly free and conscious. He cannot tear himself away from the lectures on existentialism. Sartre's words that man is condemned to be free wash over him like a powerful wave. Every choice he makes is a step towards his personal destiny, which he shapes himself. Beyond others' expectations, beyond imposed standards. What if he dares to start his own journey to happiness? He turns to Eastern philosophy. The smile of Buddha and his teaching of the middle path immerse him in thoughts about balance. In a world full of extremes, how does one find this balance? What if true strength lies in the ability to not judge and condemn, but simply to accept? He feels his heart fill with relief. The mystery of love unfolds before him like a flower blooming in the morning sun. He catches himself thinking that love is not just a feeling, but a choice we make every day. Does love deepen when we open ourselves to the world? When we learn to forgive and understand? Fully immersed in the intricate world of philosophy, he realizes that each concept, each thought is not just an idea but an entire path that leads to inner enlightenment. And like a spark, hope ignites in his heart. Perhaps he will be able to find the answer to the main question. What is his true purpose? He is ready to embark on this exciting journey to find out. Have you ever wondered what happens when virtual reality starts to take over your life? It may seem like a harmless obsession, but when the world of screens begins to overshadow life beyond them, a real struggle begins. He found himself again in his world, where bright lights and the sounds of complex games were replaced by the gray and uninviting landscape of reality. As he passed familiar faces, he only now noticed how their eyes were filled with dark circles from fatigue, and smiles had become a rarity. How did he himself turn into this shadow, forgetting what it means to be real? For a moment it seemed to him that all his experience in the virtual world was a shiny suit that prevented him from breathing in real life. He remembered how he spent hours immersed in a world where victories were easier than in reality, where each achievement felt like something special, and each failure was a trifle that could easily be erased with the push of a button. But here, against the backdrop of familiar streets and mundane faces, he suddenly realized this is not just a game. This is his life, pieced together in fragments, without real relationships, emotions, and moments. An incredible dissonance overwhelmed him. He could see himself, not in the light of victories, but amid the gray every day. His hours in the virtual world brought only temporary comfort, leaving emptiness inside. How could he sink so deeply into illusions, forgetting the present, that each moment in life is an opportunity that cannot be replaced? Confusion crept into his soul. How to live on? In that moment he understood. If he didn't take a step back, he would lose not only his connection with others but also himself. And now the time had come to question all his priorities and take his life back. It was essential to break the chains, leave the virtual worlds behind, and learn to feel reality again. What if everything we know about humanity turns out to be an illusion? Sitting on the edge of the rooftop, I feel the wind carrying unseen questions as if whispering in my ear. Looking down at this world filled with lights and hustle, I catch myself thinking that we build tall buildings and create technologies, yet lose something important. I see people rushing through the streets, absorbed in their worries, and I wonder, what does it mean to be human in this endless rhythm of life? When we stop and look around, do we really understand who we are? Being human is not just about living and breathing. It's about feeling, dreaming, making mistakes, and getting back up. We build our lives based on expectations and standards, but sometimes it's worth asking ourselves the simplest question. What is truly human in this? Have you ever felt lost in this world? The realization that each of us is unique yet so similar to others. We strive for recognition, aim for success, but understand that in this race we can forget what makes us alive. What if in our pursuit of more we overlook the important thing, to be genuine? In those moments alone with myself on the edge of a skyscraper, I feel that it is here, in these reflections, that the power lies. Questions without answers that lead us to self-discovery. I look at the horizon and a thought comes to mind. Who am I, if not just a part of this city? Being human means not only to exist but also to empathize, to love, to make mistakes. It's important to remember, the value of our lives is not in high achievements but in the little things that make us human. So what does it really mean to be human in this wonderfully chaotic world? Each of us has our unique story, and perhaps the answer lies in the very question itself. How many years have you been living by someone else's standards? Sometimes we forget who we really are, getting tangled in the expectations of others like puppets on strings. I was the same. Every day I adjusted to others' opinions, fearing judgment, seeking approval in the eyes of friends, colleagues, even strangers. But in an instant, everything changed. I stood before the mirror. I looked at my reflection and didn't recognize myself. Eyes full of fear and doubt looked back at me as if asking, "When will you learn to be yourself?" And consciousness struck like lightning. These expectations, these stifling frames are not mine. I cannot live like this anymore. Gathering all my courage, I spoke words that turned everything upside down. I will no longer follow someone else's path. I choose my life. In that moment, warmth ignited in my chest, dispelling all doubts. I realized that the true path is my inner voice, not what others impose. This simple phrase awakened a new strength within me. It's like the moment you embark on a journey full of unknowns, trusting only yourself. I felt the weight I had been carrying on my shoulders disappear. It was not just liberation, it was true transformation. I am no longer a puppet, I am the master of my choice. Now I am ready to move forward, following my dreams, and this feeling has become a part of me. How do you feel about your reflection in the mirror? It's time to move from fear to action. Your life is your decision. What if happiness did not depend on external factors, but was hidden deep within us? He searched for it in the outside world for a long time, in exam grades, awards won, and the opinions of others. But each time he managed to achieve what he wanted, only an empty feeling grew inside him. The cold wind of disappointment blew over him, and he realized he was wandering in the wrong direction. One day he stumbled upon an old album with dusty drawings. Each brushstroke reminded him of carefree childhood days when art was the only source of joy. He remembered how he would sit on the grass, drawing a world full of color and imagination. At that moment, something inside him clicked, as if a key had turned in a lock. He began to go outside every morning with a notebook and pencil. The sun was just beginning to rise above the horizon when he made his first sketches. He took his time, diving into the process, allowing each stroke to transport him to another dimension, one where there was no place for worries. Drawing became his salvation, a way to express what could not be described in words. Then came the inspiration to engage in music. The guitar left in the corner of the room turned out to be a forgotten treasure. He began to play melodies, feeling how each note filled him with energy, like waves of happiness. Passionate chords took him beyond the daily routine. And finally, he decided to try sports. The workouts not only strengthened his body, but also freed his mind. A sense of achievement filled him, and each drop of sweat brought hope and confidence. He suddenly realized happiness did not lie in prizes and recognition, but in how he spent every minute, rejecting conventions and creating his reality. He found freedom to be himself, and that became his true wealth. Each step on the path to self-expression opened new horizons. Now he knows the key to happiness was always in his hands. It was up to him to decide how to use it. Are you ready to see what true freedom looks like? It's not what they tell you on the television screen or in the office at the morning meeting. Everyone talks about the success achieved through fixation on a regular job and standard relationships. But what if that's not your story? I was standing on the shore when something clicked inside me. Each time I watched the waves, it felt like they were whispering on, "You shouldn't be here." Working a hateful job for a meager salary? normal relationships that require compromises. All of this felt like a trap that was hard to escape. In that moment, I realized that all these rules were just constructs created by others. I gave up my normal schedule and morning alarms as if I had shed chains. Yes, it caused shock in my surroundings. Many friends tried to drag me back into my familiar framework, but I noticed that the more I refused, the more light surrounded me. Every no said to the system gave me the chance to say yes to myself. I started looking for unusual paths. I learned to speak 4 languages, took spontaneous trips, explored the world and myself. Over time, real miracles began to happen in my life. I formed connections with amazing people who were also seeking their way, and this was the beginning of a new life full of adventures and opportunities. How often do we allow others to write the script of our lives? What castles do we build in our minds when we are simply afraid to step away from the familiar? Open your eyes to how wonderful it is to be free. Step aside from stereotypes and gain the ability to choose. In this world full of wonders, only you decide what your path will be. What if I told you that everything you believed is false? We live in a world where the opinions of others dictate our lives, but what if everything could change? Thoughts swirl in your mind, colors blur, and the familiar reality seems so gray and joyless. But what if we have the opportunity to create our own reality? He once again enters the world of virtuality, but this time not as a mere observer, but as a creator. Sunlight plays on his face as he begins to shape everything around him. Every stroke, every movement leads to something new and amazing. He needs no approvals or advice. He lifts his eyes and sees his dreams coming to life. The skies shimmer with colors. Houses from his imagination rise from oblivion, and the world is filled with people who share his vision. How many times have we forgotten our own desires by following the crowd? He feels every cell in his body filled with energy. How pleasant it is to realize that now he sets the rules of the game. This is not just a game, it's his life, full of bright moments and deep emotions. He catches himself thinking, how satisfying it will be to feel like a true architect of his world. How does the feeling of freedom from prejudiced norms empower his spirit? He understands that in this journey there are no limits. The world before him is open, and he is ready to explore. Every step is an act of creation. Every mistake is a step toward perfection. Why wait when you can start right now? Must one remain within the bounds of the familiar when everything inside whispers of change? He laughs with joy, for his thoughts, desires, and dreams can now create something incredible. This is not just a game. This is the beginning of a new life, where everyone is a creator, not just a spectator. How wonderful it is to realize that he is finding his way in this vast ocean of possibilities. Now he knows. Reality is not an outcome, but a process. And in this process, he is free. With each passing day, he distances himself more from opinions, from expectations, and discovers amazing horizons. Every second in this new world is a step closer to his true self. What will happen if you stop limiting yourself? On a roof where the skies merge with the earth, the hero stands with open arms, as if about to embrace the air. The sunset, like an artist's palette, paints everything around in bright and warm tones. Each color seems to tell a story of freedom and independence. He recalls all the obstacles that were in his way, fears, doubts, the expectations of others. Every time he felt he had to adapt to someone, he lost a part of himself. But what if all of this was not so important? No matter how complicated his story is, the twists of fate became the steps to a new understanding. Now he realizes that true freedom is not the absence of connections, but the ability to choose his connections, his emotions, his paths. This knowledge is like a revelation, a awakening that fills him with inspiration. He understands that he is not just a rough detail in the machine of life, but an active creator of his unique journey. With the wind in his hair and the sun gliding over his shoulders, the hero laughs. He laughs at what once held him back, at the fears that grew to the size of monsters but turned out to be just shadows. He inhaled fresh air, filling his lungs with hope, ready for new challenges. In this sunset, he is not just looking at the world. He feels that he has become a part of it. He understands that every step, every decision is his personal freedom. Here on this roof, he is not just dreaming of the future, he is creating it. Interacting with himself, choosing his present, this is life. And when he looks at the sunset again, he will not only see the beauty, he will feel his role in this magical day. This is his time, this is his life, and this is just the beginning.